Thanks for joining us for 5 on 5. I'm Joe Sullivan, pleased to be joined by Senator Merkley. Senator, thanks for taking time from Washington, D.C.
You bet, Joe. Pleasure to be with you.
Senator, funding for SNAP benefits stopped last week. What are you doing for over 750,000 people in Oregon who rely on SNAP benefits?
Joe, this is such an awful situation because Democrats and Republicans together said we're going to do two things so this never happens. We created a contingency fund. It has $4.5 billion in it. We created the ability to tap into revenues that come from tariffs on agricultural products. It's called the Interchange Authority. And the president said, I'm not using either of those, and I don't want to have SNAP benefits distributed. And the court said, well, wait. Last Friday, two district courts said, no, you don't understand, Mr. President. You're required by law, and you have the money, you have the authority, you have the legal obligation, so fund those benefits. The president came back this week and said, well, we've got a plan to fund them, but it involves only funding half of the benefits, not using the tariff money that's available. And therefore, everyone will have to rejigger their computers, and people may not get their SNAP funds for weeks or months. And I must say, it was so disheartening to hear a president of the United States saying, I'm deliberately depriving people of basic nutrition as a bargaining chip in a negotiation. And that's just, it's wrong. It's morally wrong. It's reprehensible. If you take that 700,000 plus that you mentioned, and they were standing in a line, that line, if they were 2 feet apart, would stretch from the northern border of Oregon with Washington to the southern border with California. And about every third person would be a child. Children are hurt if they don't eat. Their physical development is hurt. Their mental development is hurt. And they certainly don't learn anything in school when they're hungry. So this deliberate infliction of suffering on the American people is morally wrong. It's horrific. I can't imagine how it can possibly happen here in the United States.
You were on the Senate floor talking about this week, and yesterday, Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso called what you did this week a political stunt. He said the simple way of ensuring SNAP benefits go out is by reopening the government. What's your reaction to that?
Well, John Barrasso has voted against reopening the government multiple times. We put forward a bill that would reopen the government and repair the tax credits on health care so that Oregonians and people across the nation are not facing a rough doubling in the cost of health care. You know, so many people are not going to be able to afford insurance on the exchange. And so it was just like, really, that's just like moldy bread, what we were hearing from John Barrasso. I mean, the basics of the resolution I put forward said we together, Democrats and Republicans, created a fund called the Contingency Fund. We created transfer authority so that never would SNAP be shut down. And given this and given the court's instructions, we encouraged the president to immediately fund the program. That's like apple pie. That would have been so easy for him to come to the floor and say, yes, we don't want people to go hungry in our state. We don't want children and the disabled and the seniors and the most vulnerable families to be hurt. So let's encourage the president to actually do what the court said he has to do. But instead, he wanted to turn it into a political stunt.
With health insurance premiums increasing for some Oregonians, what legislative solutions are you exploring to make health care more affordable?
What we're asking for is a 1-year extension of the tax credits on the ACA, the Affordable Care Exchange, where lots of small businesses, lots of families buy their health insurance. And they're not buying a government insurance, they're buying it from private vendors. So this never involved a government insurance program. It did involve tax credits to help make private insurance affordable. And by greatly diminishing those credits, what Republicans have done is greatly increase the cost of families. And, you know, families are pretty hard struck when there's a 5% inflation. But we're talking an expected average in Oregon of some 68% inflation. A lot of folks have been writing and calling my office saying our cost of healthcare is going to double and we can't afford it. And what are we supposed to do? And I keep calling. We're going to keep saying to Republicans, look, 75% of the folks who are affected are in red states. We're not making this case in order to help out like on a partisan basis. Democrats and Republicans across the country are hurt, particularly folks in rural areas. So let's fix this together. And a lot of Republicans have come over and said, you know, we want to fix it in our state, but President Trump says we're banned from negotiating. Well, that's just wrong. After all, the whole premise of our country is laws are crafted by an assembly, Congress, that has voices from every corner of the country, not by a single person, a president. And so they should reply to the president is, of course, we're going to negotiate. Of course, we're going to talk about the issues because that's what we were elected to do. And that's our responsibility under the Constitution.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with part 2 of our 5 on 5. I'm Joe Sullivan. Welcome back to part 2 of our 5 on 5 with Senator Merkley. Senator, what can be done at the federal level to address the affordable housing crisis and homelessness in Oregon, specifically regarding the funding of local projects?
Joe, so much can be done. First of all, we have a number of community-initiated projects that will be adopted when we pass the fiscal year 26 funding bills. Those are important, but they're not the big system programs. And by those, I mean things such as vouchers that help people buy or actually to rent homes, down payment assistance to buy homes, the rural housing program to help create more housing in rural areas, because we have to build more housing and we have to have more shelter throughout the entire spectrum so that we don't have people living on the street. So we have a steps up from, if you will, from a shelter to some of the small house systems, to rental housing, to the possibility of home ownership. We need it all. And one of the things we have to do is we have to get the hedge funds out of the business of buying up the housing stock in America. They have been a huge factor in driving up the cost of buying a home and in driving up the rents. So that's why my bill that throws the hedge funds out of this business is incredibly important if we're going to have any possibility for the next generation to buy homes and to reduce the rents that are putting so many families against the wall.
What's the latest on your demands for transparency regarding federal law enforcement activities in Portland?
Well, Joe, I would like to report that the administration decides to be transparent, but they're not. But we are at that point that we have a key decision in the courts. The president said, hey, I'm going to federalize the National Guard because there is a war zone in Portland. And the district judge said, there's no war zone, so your presentation is untethered to the facts. And that was the quote, untethered to the facts. What we do see is a lot of protesting with joy and whimsy, a few occasional fisticuffs, but nothing outside what normal police takes care of. But we did see the Trump administration try to stage a fake riot in order to persuade courts and America that there is something that needs to be addressed. And we've never seen that before. They had folks back up 3 blocks and there was the protesters followed directions. Then the federal agents formed a line and had professional videographers behind them. And then on a signal, the federal agents threw down flashbangs, which sound like gunfire. They released tear gas, which creates smoke and people running around. And they shot people with pepper balls, all to create the appearance that they were disrupting a riot. That type of faked effort by the government should put chills down the spine of every American patriot. A government that would fake a riot in order to try to get authoritarian power to put troops in the street. This is way over the top that we've never seen before. It's part of the authoritarian takeover. It's endangering our freedom and our rights of protest and assembly, our freedom of speech, and we need to stand together and say we're going to defend our We the People Republic.
We have about 30 seconds left. Is there anything else you'd like our viewers to know about?
We're in a very unusual time, and I'm encouraging everyone to be off the couch, to passionately hold your electeds accountable, including myself, and to join affinity groups, because to be angry and alone is to be depressed, but to be angry and organized with others, that's to be energized and effective. And we need an energized and effective electorate working together to save our republic.
Senator Merkley, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more local news.